Now we're going to see what preserved from the architecture of 60s, or as we say, from sweet 60s. Well, in the middle of 60s, it was a really interesting situation in the architecture developments and the urban planning developments that took place in Yerevan and in Armenia in general. After this imperial Stalinistic vertical architecture, they came up other approaches which were dealing with the verticality. They came up with the environmental issues, and the architecture of the Moscow Movie Theater, the open air hall, was exactly one of those architectures which was really trying to overdraw itself from the imperial style, first of all, and the components which were also being associated from the imperial style, the Stalinist style. So here you were dealing with how the architects got back again to the modernistic, universalistic principles of the architecture. So here you can see how they had created an extension of the old building of the architecture, which of course had its functional role. It was at the same time a theater, an amphitheater, and it was also a terrace which was providing an exit from the closed theater to the pedestrian path. So let's follow up. So here you can see what have remained from the exit part. The pandus, which was like the leading closed theater volume to the terrace part. There was like the small fountain over here, and on the back side you can see a very delicate mosaic. From my perspective, a very brilliant example of the abstract art which had appeared in the public space. They're also preserved here very interesting elements, real authentic elements. These are the tiles, which were also designed by the architects and the artists. And now we're at the very amphitheater. In Yerevan there were many cinema theaters. I mean, every, let's say, micro district had to have its own cinema theater. Besides like the kindergartens, besides schools, it was like the normatives which were coming from the Soviet urban planning standards. Now all of them had been converted either into the malls, or mostly they're being turned into like the car salons, or even in the Kegelbahns. It was just the beginning of 2010 when all of a sudden there came up this news that the Moscow Open Air Cinema Hall was taken out from the list of the cultural and architectural monuments, cultural heritage formulated by the Ministry of Culture. They wanted to demolish this place and to reconstruct the church of Paul's Petrov, St. Paul's and St. Peter's Church, which was demolished in the mid-30s, 1930s, during Stalinist anti-religious campaign. So it was, we're confronting here a very interesting kind of like the cultural challenge which was taking place, like about 80, 90 years later, church came up again with this idea just to make a revenge. So there was a church here, they pulled down the church, they constructed a movie theater, and there we're coming to a more interesting topic, the confrontation of church and cinema theater. Moscow movie theater brought into the activist movement both sides. Even people who were like they really withdrew themselves with this from that political confrontation, they appeared in that movement as well. And what was their point? They were defending through modernist architecture, through cinema theater, through public space, more important, let's say, idea, more important concept. The building that really represented their past, their history. It represented their sense of commonality and communality. And at the same time, it represented the modernist past of this society, which today is being very strongly disputed. So it is very interesting combination. And in the case of Moscow movie theater, I mean, all those components like Lego, they came together and they really created a very effective blow up. Coming to the cinema rhetorics. I think it was the first case that the activist movement really succeeded to defeat its opponents. So it turned into a very serious issue, which was, from my perspective, not only unique for the Armenian case, but for whole post-Soviet, post-socialist, and post-ideological cultural situation and political and social situation. And those other perspectives appeared in the press, they appeared in the public discussions, and those perspectives related not just to the architecture. So through the architecture, the society started to reconsider its current social situation. So as the architecture was a really revolutionary architecture, it created another kind of, like, it generated another revolutionary movement. The struggle for this place is still going on, because this stagnation which is happening now, it's not a good thing, because it's a regular tactics used by neoliberal governing systems just to cool down the situation, to pacify it, to create another blank zone, to just, while the society will forget. What is my perspective? Why is it important to reconsider the current developments through the perspective of the 60s? Because 60s were trying in the same time to deal with the modernist principles, but at the same time there were approaches concerning reconsideration, the radicality of those principles, to create a certain balances. So this architecture is a beautiful example of those balances. But who needs these balances today? When we see how the neoliberal architecture globally is just replicating in a certain way the other segments of the modernist architecture. For instance, I really connecting the architecture which is developing today in Dubai, for instance, with the architecture which was developing in the Soviet Union during the Stalinist period. This is the architecture of power. You're just having different ideologies behind that power.